and pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Reverend Dr. Daniel OConnell. That's a lot of titles, actually, you know. He was a Unitarian Universalist minister with experience for over 20 years and has served congregations in Danbury, Connecticut, St. Louis, Missouri, and Houston, Texas. He's not a UU minister anymore, although he does still speak to some places like us, which we're really happy about. But he's now doing many other things which you'd be interested to know about. He's doing other things and giving of himself and his time to other worthy things. So you should talk to him about that after, because it's interesting, because it's new. That's something we didn't know. And so it'd be good to know what he's really doing now, so ask him. Anyway, Dr. OConnell has spoken to us many times in the past, and we've been very fortunate that he's done that, and we've gotten to have a relationship with him. So those of you, if you haven't heard him, which I think everybody pretty much here has, and you're here, he always leaves us with much to think about, and I expect it to be no different today. Dr. OConnell.
Is this good, Mary? There's a lot more of you here than at 10 minutes before the service started, so it is good to be back. So, last time I talked about make-believe, right? The world, we wouldn't have picked this out to be the way it is right now. And so today, it's a little bit more about letting go of fear. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll try and go 24 hours without paying attention to the news. You know, or I'll tell myself I'm going to go out and do some forest bathing, right? Where you go out in nature and you don't have your phone, you purposely don't bring it, because then you don't have the temptation. So one of the reasons that I went into the ministry was I had a near-death experience on an airplane. And I realized I was going to die. This was early 30s. I think I had an early midlife crisis. And I realized that up until that point, my life had been of no consequence, certainly not to anybody else. So that's when I decided I would go to seminary, not to become a minister, but to learn about what the world's religions had to say about the meaning of life and death and all the rest of it. And because I grew up Unitarian Universalist, that's the path that I took. A lot of unexpected things along the way. So part of the training for most ministers is to do a hospital chaplaincy. I did it full-time for 3 months over the summer at Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's in Chicago, a 3,000-bed hospital. And we had a supervisor and about 10 other ministers in training. I was the only UU. And I realized that this being a hospital chaplain at this big hospital in Chicago, there was something fundamentally terrifying about being in that position. There was a part of me, and I knew this was not rational. You know, I grew up with science. I knew this wasn't rational. The thought that if I were around dying people, that somehow that would transfer over to me, and I'd end up dying along with them, kind of like being swept by the tide. And this created more anxiety, because who would want a hospital chaplain who's so afraid of death, it scared the people around him? Right? This is not good. We need the opposite of that. And so the thing was, it was going to do no good to pretend this fear didn't exist. I had to accept it, that it was real, no matter how irrational. So how to let it go? Now, sometimes you may think you shouldn't feel a certain way, and yet you do. And feeling that way is something that you might not want to talk to other people about because feeling that way embarrasses you. So, when you take ownership of a real feeling, despite you not liking it, then you can deal with it. So I said, well, I'm a chaplain. What would I tell somebody who is having this fear of death? I mean, because somebody's going to ask me. So I would go to the chapel in the hospital and meditate at least 10 minutes, sometimes 20, before going on rounds. It calmed me down. It helped me find some brief respite, some peace of mind before heading off to the next scene of life or death with a family gathered around a bed. Of course, it gets more intense. Because once every 10 days or so, I would be the on-call chaplain, which meant I slept in a little bed tucked away in a side room in the hospital, and then I carried a pager. Some of you may remember those. A little black box you put on your belt, and it goes beep really loudly. It still does. They still have them? Okay. So at this particular hospital, every time there was a death, which occurred 3 times a day, like clockwork, the chaplain would be paged and off we would go. After a month of daily meditation and reminding myself that although my death was and is inevitable, it's very unlikely to happen today, right? So I kind of forced myself into thinking that I was pretty much over my fear of dying people. More than once, I had been in a hospital room with a family gathered around a loved one's deathbed. But then there comes a situation that's going to test you. It's going to test you in your beliefs about yourself, what you can endure, and how much suffering is actually self-created. So one day, late in the afternoon, I was called into an unfamiliar section of the hospital. There was a woman in her early 30s, and all the nurses were talking about her. Not a good sign. This woman was so filled with fear that she was scaring the doctors and nurses. That's how full of fear she was. The nurse told me that this woman had a lung removed a while ago because of cancer, and now there was a spot on the other lung. And she was so fearful, she would not calm down. She didn't want any medication to calm down. She didn't want to be peaceful. She did not want to go to sleep or eat or drink. She's 30 years old, otherwise seemingly healthy, and she was in absolute terror that she was just going to stop breathing. So she didn't want to lie down. She didn't want to go to sleep. And the nurses told me all this just before I go into the patient's room. They wanted me to know what I was probably in for. They hoped I could help calm the woman down. And I got there, and I have never seen somebody so pale. Very pale. Sitting up straight in bed, unblinking. Not even noticing me coming into the room. And it was like fear was oozing out of her pores, just filling the room. And I went in, maybe to talk to her, certainly to encounter her, and it was like, it was her, it was me, nurses outside the door, and death was in the room. I mean, it's not rational, but that's just exactly how it felt. But there was something much closer than death. Fear. It was like a vibration in the ear. You could almost hear it like the hum of an air conditioner. Fear just pulsing. And it was all I could do walking in there to have her fear become my fear and overwhelming me. I could see why she was spooking out other people. And so we talked for about 10 minutes. And then by then my shift was over, and I arranged for another chaplain to come visit her later. And the next morning, of course, I found out she had died in the night. 30 years old. literally died from fear. She could not get peace of mind. She was too filled with fear. She had fed her own fear, and it killed her. So, what is the antidote to fear? The antidote to fear is peace of mind. If you're in the land of fear, the land of peace of mind can be pretty far away. Does this make sense? The opposite of fear is peace of mind. A lot of things can make us fearful. I mean, more so these days, and some for good reason. But if we have a choice, wouldn't we want to move toward peace of mind? I mean, if you could flip a switch, if you could, and just go and have peace of mind, well, I mean, if you could just pull it out, what are the implications? If you have peace of mind, you don't have fear, you don't have anxiety. If you have peace of mind, you are not desperate. You have peace of mind. A sage once said, happiness is a full belly. All else is luxury. But I think peace of mind trumps that. That was unintended. Peace of mind is more important. Peace of mind means you are full of contentment. And if you have peace of mind, you are not at war. You are not at war with yourself. You are not at war with anyone else. And most of all, I think peace of mind, when you really feel it, however fleeting, it rubs off on the people around you. So when you have peace of mind, you are creating that environment of peace of mind for the people who are near you, your friends, your family, the stranger in the seat next to you. Now, there are a lot of ways to arrive at peace of mind. 4 of them work for me, and they may work for you too. One, of course, is practicing meditation to quiet the monkey mind. 2, and this is easier for some people, expressing gratitude, to rebalance your perspective. When you express gratitude, you are focusing on being grateful, you are rebalancing your attitude, you are making the road to peace of mind much easier to traverse. And then, this can be hard, discarding old beliefs, to unburden past hurts. And then the 4th one is melting your resentment, to find forgiveness. I read that giving yourself a pat on the back can feel remarkably good. It's a little reward for yourself. If you're up for this grand spiritual experiment, go ahead. Now do it a little slowly, like, hey, attaboy, good. Okay, you're here with us. We, you and I, are here together. It's just a tiny bit of peace of mind. I often feel I'm too busy to spend time trying to get to peace of mind, and then I remember, well, my doctor is a little concerned about my blood pressure being a little too high. So if I can get a little peace of mind, just a little bit. The other thing is, when you get that peace of mind, however fleetingly, you feel content, feel at home in the world. When you feel at home in the world, you feel loved. You feel loving towards others. After all, you're at peace. So if you're feeling anxious, you can do a little meditation. Sit down, but sit up straight. Breathe in slowly. Breathe out. A little meditation can melt the ice of fear. And then there's expressing gratitude. When I was a kid, I thought if only I got a certain toy for Christmas, I would be happier. You know, and maybe I would until the novelty, the newness of the toy wore off, and then it was back to normal again. I think this is called the hedonic treadmill. But then there comes a day, often in adolescence, maybe later, when we realize all the toys in the world, all the tea in China, none of it will ultimately fill us. None of that makes us whole. None of that brings about what we may truly want: to love, to be loved, to be accepted, and to accept others, and to feel at last a profound sense of peace. One thing I tried when my kids were little was to have them say 3 things that went well for them that day, particularly at the end of the day. And no matter how rotten the day seems to have been, we could always find 3 things to be happy about. In fact, you could do that tonight. Just before you go to bed, think about and say aloud 3 good things that went well for you today. And even if nothing's gone well for you today, I mean, the day, it's only, it's still early. And when times are really tough, you can actually do this and keep a journal. And then when you're feeling down and you have no energy, you just go back a couple of pages. You're like, oh, okay. I have things to feel grateful about. And you count your existing blessings. And when you do that, you dull the ache for what you do not have. You reduce the fear. You come to accept yourself just as you are now, without additional shiny things to release fear. You can meditate, you can practice gratitude, and then discard old beliefs. Old belief systems cause you pain and distress when they no longer work. For all of you who did not grow up you know exactly what I mean. But there's still always so much learning. After I got married, my then wife wanted me to cut up some carrots and celery and put them in water in the refrigerator to keep them crisp. And I don't know why. Maybe it was just one of those days. But I thought, well, if you put carrots and celery in water, you're just helping them dissolve, right? I mean, isn't water the universal solvent? Heck yeah. And so because I thought I knew better, because I had this untested belief, didn't stop to consider it one bit, I didn't put the carrots and celery in water. And within a few days, of course, they were rubbery and I had to toss them. So my family suffered a tiny bit because I insisted my unexamined belief had to be true. And I didn't even know I had a belief system about carrots and celery until it showed up. And that belief system, it produced rubbery carrots and rubbery celery. Isn't it amazing what old unexamined beliefs can lead you to do? So one day, months later, we were at her mother's house, and I looked into her mother's refrigerator, and there, glistening like jewels, were carrots in water. Nice and crunchy. Perfect, really. Sometimes our unexamined beliefs aren't even true, and they cause us pain. And this is on us. If we can meditate and get our mind just a little more clear, if we can find 3 things to be grateful for, to say out loud, if we can examine our painful beliefs, we can get much closer to peace of mind. A 4th way, and arguably it's more difficult, a 4th way to move toward peace of mind is to practice forgiveness. Clearly, if you are holding back on forgiving something or someone, it may be almost impossible to get to peace of mind if that is eating you up. Now, I think about this when I think about my dad. There was a time when I turned 21 and the child support payments were stopped, and my mother told me I had to move out of our family house. And I was pretty angry at my dad for the divorce, for not being the kind of father I thought I wanted and deserved. And so, you know what I did? I moved away from my mother's house outside of Washington, D.C. to be in New York City with some friends, and I did not keep in contact with my dad or practically anyone else from home, and I was away for months. until finally I got sick. I got mononucleosis. You need a couple weeks of bed rest. And so I got an Amtrak train ticket one way, $50, from New York City back to DC, and I went to my mother's house. You probably know, as the poet Robert Frost puts it, home is the place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in. And so my mother did. And after I got better, I went to see my father. And he told me he was talking with a colleague of his, and they were discussing their children. And my father couldn't say anything about me or where I was because he didn't even know if I was alive or dead. And all I could think of was, good. Because I was still angry. And it came to me later that, he did the best that he could, even if it felt like it wasn't enough for me at the time. And at some point, I realized I'm creating this suffering. I'm going to stop doing that and see what that feels like. And it occurred to me that he and I were more alike than different, that I had some of his same weaknesses and strengths. And so what I did was I decided I was going to notice about him what I was grateful for, and that helped. And I found the ability to practice gratitude. And then I examined my old belief that my father really should have been a different person than he was. And of course, that's arguing with reality. It's unfair. Reality always wins. And when I let go of that belief that he should have been better in the way I thought, when I let go of that belief, my animosity towards him almost vanished, and I felt better about myself. I discarded outworn beliefs. And of course, after being grateful for his good acts, after ditching an outworn belief system, he should have been different, forgiveness was now in reach. Imagine that. I mean, the past is fixed, right? We can't change it. We can't change the facts about the past, can we? Maybe we can change our attitude about the past. I thought it was so simple. Stupid, really, but it worked. It worked for me. I stopped demanding that the past should have been different than it actually was. And my father and I, because I was able to get rid of these beliefs, we became more kind toward one another. A few years later, he had a stroke. Gradually, he didn't know anything about his grandchildren, and then his children, and then he had no idea who I was, his firstborn son. And yet, I was grateful. We had found peace, and that was a great gift. And I am so glad that I learned to do what I needed to do to forgive him, and maybe for him to forgive me. When he died a few years ago, we were both at peace. We were at peace with each other, and we were at peace with our history. Do you have somebody in your life like that? Someone you might forgive, at least for now? Maybe the person you most need to forgive is yourself. How to get to peace of mind. Practice meditation, express gratitude, discard old beliefs, melting your resentment. Let us breathe in and out. Let us embrace the feeling of love. Let us embrace the feeling of belonging to this great fellowship. May it be and amen.